Are you a worm farmer? Have you been contemplating starting a worm farming business? We need you. So if you are thinking of starting a worm farming business, or if you are a worm farmer and your wormery is overproducing, it's producing more than you can use, would you consider becoming a commercial worm farmer? Here is why it is a good idea to consider commercial worm farming. Sells composting worms for people who want to raise composting worms. Now we could get worms at the pet shop because they sell a few worms for pet food, or you can get worms for that are being sold for baits. And most of the time, in fact, when I just got started out, the only bait worms that you could find in Saskatchewan was Canadian night crawlers. Now these are composting worms, but they are not the ideal composting worms because they do well in Saskatchewan because of the cold weather, but when it comes to summer, you have to keep them cool, and the work that you have to put in to keep them cool is just too much. Well, it was too much for me, so it's a lot of work if you're going to be raising them for commercial purposes. If you're raising them for around your house to use in your garden, then it's not that bad. But not to stray from the point, in the last 6 years since I got started, there are more worm suppliers. But there is still a shortage because constantly I would get called and say, okay, we're looking for composting worms. We tried this site, that site, and we cannot find composting worms. Another thing to consider is that there are websites that you can actually go on to find suppliers, which is excellent. But then one of the issues that we face is that when we find a lot of these people, these suppliers, they have to ship the worms to you. And that can be challenging, especially if you live in a region that experiences extreme heat or extreme cold. Then it can be a challenge because there is a time frame when shipping is not very ideal. So for those people in your region, can you become a worm farming entrepreneur? Can you supply people in your region with worms and with worm castings? Because mark you, there are those who don't want to raise worms for whatever reason, or cannot raise the worm for whatever reason, but they would like the benefit of worm castings. So can you become a worm farm supplier? Not only that, but since the pandemic, more people are in a panic state because of what is happening with the unavailability of organic fertilizer or the very high cost of fertilizer, and so they're trying to find natural ways to produce their own fertilizer. And so more and more people are learning about worm farming and they want to start a worm farm. More people are becoming health conscious. They're trying to eat healthy, they're trying to grow what they eat. And because of the pandemic again and the food shortages that we see happening, the food shortages that are bound to get worse, because of these things, more and more people are trying to get involved in worm farming. Can you become a supplier? You might be concerned that, oh yes, I have worms, I could become a supplier, but who am I going to sell it to? Or you might be concerned about what you would need to start selling your worms commercially. Well, the truth is, initially, not much is needed. Just do what you can to help others. So you might want to use just what you have now, start with what you have, sell in small quantities. So there are people who are concerned that if they start with a pound of worms and they're paying X amount for the worms, what happens if they lose their worms? And so there are those who want to get started in worm farming, but they want to start with a small amount of worms, 100 worms, 50 worms, 200 worms, 250 worms. There are those who might want a pound of worms or even more. Can you start small? Because when you start small, the advantage is that, for one, you do not have to go out of your way to get the resources, get the material that you need to start selling your worms. Start with 100 worms, selling 50 worms, 100 worms, 200 worms. Because your goal is to ensure that people who wants to get started in worm farming have access to worms. Start small, and as your worms multiply, as your business grows, then you can scale your business accordingly. You start making more worm bins. You might want to consider, as your business starts to grow, you might want to consider the type of bins that you're going to use. Consider your age group, for example. Are you young and frisky and strong, where lifting worm bin to maintain them is not really much of a challenge for you? Or are you in your close to retirement age and you want to make a little money on the side, or you might want to replace your income, or you want to ensure that when that pension time comes in, you're supplementing that pension? If that is the case, if you're in that age group where you're close to retirement, or for health reasons you might not be able to do a lot of lifting, then you might want to consider the type of bin that is going to work best for you, so that you don't have to lift the bin every time you're going to maintain it, and so that when it is time to harvest, you don't have to do a lot of lifting as well. So these are just some of the things that you need to consider. Who are you going to sell to? Who in your region needs your worms? That is something else that you might want to consider. Do you have a means of marketing your worms? Word of mouth works. And today most people are on some form of social media, whether it is Facebook or it is Instagram, it's YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is. And they constantly create posts about whatever interests them. Can you start creating posts regarding your worms? And as these people start to check out your videos about worms, can you offer them practical tips on worm farming so that they can get to know you? And you might want to mention the region that you live in, because by doing that, if someone needs worm and they're in your region, they could say to you, okay, I'm living close by, where can I source worm? Do you know anyone around? And then you can make your offer. Yes, here I am a supplier. So these are just some of the things that you can consider, but right now we are at that stage where we need more worm suppliers, more worm casting suppliers. So if you are in a position to start a worm farm business, do so. Help those who need the help. Because remember, we're all in this together. Although the world tried to get us to believe that a dog-eat-dog world is the best, that's not how it works, because it only breeds division. But when you do what you can to help others, others are also willing to help you. So don't hold back the knowledge that you have. Don't hold back the worms if you're able to start this business. And if you are contemplating starting a worm farming business, don't wait until you have everything that you need to get started. Start now, start small, work your way up. You don't want to wait, and the reason you don't want to wait is because we are in an economy that is shifting very fast. Remember when I started this video, I started off by telling you a story about when I got started and how difficult it was to find composting worms. Since then, even online, the amount of worm suppliers that are available now compared to then has drastically increased, but it still is not enough. Why am I telling you this? Is because you don't want to wait until the market is so saturated that it is hard for you to get a footing in there. And even if there are worm suppliers in your area, does that mean you can't become a supplier too? It definitely does not mean that. Because when you become a supplier, you are not the same as the person down there or the supplier over there. Tailor your offer to attract the people that you want to market to. So, for example, Jane might be someone who sells only to gardeners locally. What about you? Can you sell to garden centers? Can you sell to people who are in the lawn care business? Can you, in addition to offering your worms and your worm casting, offer other services regarding worm farming, whether you're going to be helping people with their worm farm? Can you offer something that makes you unique to your client, that makes them want to support you? The world is in a state now where it's not just the economy that is in chaos. Health-wise, you've seen it for yourself. COVID came out, and meanwhile COVID is here wrecking the place. The natural disasters are increasing like we have never seen it before. Diseases of different sorts keep popping up. Every day you go on the internet, you can hear of a new disease that has come about. And a lot of these things is because of the things that we are doing to this planet. We are destroying our home. When you become a worm farming entrepreneur, you are helping to save the environment, because everyone who owns a worm farm, they are no longer throwing their food scraps into the landfill. It is being recycled by the worms and being used in the garden to make not only the earth cleaner, but to make people healthier. And remember, for a lot of us, we have children, grandchildren, friends, family. What about the generation that comes after us? So when you become a worm farming entrepreneur, you're not just helping others, you're helping yourself. You're creating impact, and you're helping one step at a time to change the world for the better. So if it is possible, any at all, for you to become a worm farm supplier, then do so. Don't hesitate. Don't wait until when the market is so saturated that you can't get a footing in there. Now is the time. Take action. You don't want to be there fiddling with your idea of starting your worm farm, and you think about, oh, I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way, and you spend so much time just going over the same thing over and over, or you decide on this and then you change your mind. Not that deciding and changing your mind is bad, but start, and if you see a need to change something after you've started, then change it. But if you sit and wait until everything is perfect, you're gonna find that all those people close by who have worm farms that are thinking of becoming suppliers, they're gonna get started long before you ever get the chance to. And when you finally decide that, okay, I'm going to do this, the market is so saturated that you have to really, really struggle to get your business to where you want it to be. So now is the time for you to get started. Now is the time for you to decide. So here's an assignment for you. Look at your community that you're in. Research worm farmers. Are there worm farmers who are suppliers in your region? Look at what they are doing. Are they profitable? Sometimes you can't tell, sometimes you can, because they might have a social media presence. So look at what they are doing, and if you can find them on social media and you see that they are doing well, can you copy what they are doing? Can you learn from their example? And if you can, go ahead. Do the things that works and avoid the things that doesn't work. But now is the time to get started. So do the research. Look into who you want to market your worms to. And look for where the demand is. So is the demand coming from gardeners? Is demand coming from people who loves fishing? So you could sell bait worms. Where is the demand? And if there is no demand in your region, but there are gardeners in your region, there are fishermen in your region, or people who do fishing for fun, are there landscapers in your region? You can create that demand. You don't have to wait until that demand comes. For example, look at the cell phone or any form of telephone for that matter. There was no demand for it when the first person decided that they were going to create it. There wasn't any demand for it. But the designer of it decided that, yes, this can become something that people need, and we can create something that people cannot do without. And they went ahead and they started on it. They faced challenges. They come up with one idea on how to do it, and they started out, some parts of it work, some part doesn't work, and they have to keep going back to the table and trying to figure out how to make it work. And once they got it working, they created a demand for it. They introduced it to the public, and they show what it can do for the public. And look at us now. Most of us, the vast majority of the world, owns one or more cell phones. So if in your region you have more worms than you actually need, and you'd like to start that worm farming business, but you don't know if there is a demand for it, you can create that demand. You're using the worm casting in your garden. What does your garden look like? Is it looking luscious and healthy and all good? You're on social media. Record a video of your garden. And for some of you, you might be afraid of showing your face on the screen. That's no problem. When I first started out, I wouldn't show my face. Not that I was afraid, because I've always had a public presence from I was young. But I like to be private, and so when I was doing my videos, when I just started, I wouldn't show my face. You would hear my voice, you would see what I am showing you, but you would not see me. So if you are afraid of having that facial presence on screen, that's no problem. You just make sure that your camera is recording your garden, and you talk about how your worms are doing, how they're benefiting your garden. You show your worms and you create videos about how you look after your worms. When you do these kind of things, they build credibility. You're letting the people around you know. And when you have friends, talk about your worms to your friends. You can simply walk around in your region. Look at people's garden. When you see someone in the garden, you talk about the garden and how lovely the garden looks. Or the lawn, if they have a nice, healthy lawn, you talk about that. You build a rapport with that person, and then you talk about your garden, and you can ask them, oh, what do you use for fertilizer in your garden? And you ask them, what are the benefits of it? What are the disadvantages? of whatever it is that they're using. And then you talk about what you're using in your garden. You tell them, okay, I raise a worm farm. I raise composting worms and I'm using the worm castings in my garden. And so far, I really like it. I really like the benefits that I have been getting. And you share some of that benefits with them. And you can come and say, okay, would you like to try some? And or even if you don't ask, maybe another time, you go back with a gallon or a liter of it and you offer it to them and say, okay, use it on this plant or one or two of your plants and see what happened. Compare this plant to that one that you didn't use it on. And when they do that and they see the result of how that worm castings helped their plants, they're either going to want more of the worm castings or they're going to become interested in getting the worms for themselves so that they can produce their own castings. And you know what? They might tell their friends too about it. And you see right there, you start to build traction. You start building your business just like that. And you're not going to do that with just one person in your community. You're going to do that with as many people as you can in your community. Start giving away your products. Let people experience the real value of worm castings. And then you can highlight while you're talking to them how simple it is to raise the worms. You just have to get the worm bin and your bedding and your food scraps. And you talk about just how simple it is to maintain them. When you do that, you're building credibility. And people are going to want to know more how they can get these worms. Are you willing to sell them? Are you willing to give away the castings and talk about your worms? Let them know that you sell them. But you're not going to let them know you sell the worms right off the bat. No. You build a rapport with that person. So the first time you go around, you just simply talk about how lovely their garden looks. And the next time you go around, you can go and just offer some of your products and you talk about your worms. But you're not going to let them know you sell it at that point in time. And after they have used your castings for a while, you can go back to them and say, how was it? Did you like it? Were you able to see a difference between the plants that you used the casting on and those that you didn't use the castings on? And then based on their reply, you go a little bit further from there. And then once you have that rapport with them, you can tell them, okay, would you be interested in raising these worms for yourself? I'm starting a little business. I'm trying to help. You're not going to promote it as if you're trying to gain from them. You're going to promote it as if, which is what you're really going to be doing anyway, is trying to help them to have a nicer garden. That is your goal. Remember, your goal is not about the money. It's not about the business. It is about helping the people around you. Because I can guarantee you, when the people around you are happy, it helps you to be happy too. When you're kind to the people around you, people are kind to you. Have you ever been in a small group and everyone around you is sad? And you went into the group and you're all happy and the people around you are sad, and slowly you find that your mood is just going down. Another time you might be in a crowd and everyone around you is happy and you are in a sad mood, but because the people around you are happy, you find yourself starting to feel better, yourself starting to feel happy as well. So the point of this is, when you make the people around you happy, they will make you happy. So when you are promoting your business, it's not about you, it is about them. You want to give them quality, you want to give them value, you want them to see how what you offer can help to improve their life, not how it is going to improve yours. You want them to see how it can improve their lives. And when they see how it can improve their lives, then they're going to want what you have to offer. So again, let me ask you, can you become a worm farming entrepreneur? Can you sell your worms to the people that needs it? Can you help people to live healthier? Can you help your environment to be cleaner so that the generations that come after you and you yourself can be healthier too? If so, spend some time. Think about it. How can you go about turning your worm farm into a business? And if you need help, I am here. Lots of worm farmers are there. You can join our worm farming community, whether on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever. Join worm farming communities. Reach out. If you need help, you can ask questions. You can offer solution to those who have questions. So if you find this video helpful, if you see where this video was able to offer practical value to you, and you think you would like to learn more about becoming a worm farming entrepreneur, please subscribe to my channel, because there are lots of important information that is going to be provided on this channel to help you on your journey to becoming a worm farming entrepreneur. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day. Yeah man, a time for growth.